When we start trying to be efficient, we're actually missing the key thing because formation requires friction. The whole point of efficiency is to make that clock work so predictably and reliably. It's just that that's not good for actually forming people.
On the day I got engaged years ago, I remember being so excited to share the news, but I knew I had to share it in the right way. You see, for me at least, there would definitely be a fun post on Facebook with pictures of my then boyfriend Mike on bended knee, the Alamo standing strong as backdrop behind him. But there were some people in my life, those I was closest with, who would expect to hear the news in a personal message from me. That's because when we feel close to someone, when we feel like we're truly doing life with certain people who know us and love us, we don't want to find out personal information about them with the masses through technology. We expect more. But we're living in a world that feels more and more impersonal. Relationships feel increasingly distant, and many of us have begun to feel isolated. It seems each of us may have fewer people that would share their big news in a personal way instead of letting us find out with everyone else on social media. It makes me wonder what we're losing out on. What changes should we be making in our culture to reclaim the intimacy we all need? How is technology driving this push toward the impersonal? And how can we work to put people first in a world dominated by devices? From the A.G. Butt Foundation, I'm Camille Hall Ortega, and this is the Echoes Podcast. On today's episode, we're welcoming author, musician, and public speaker Andy Crouch. Andy is the author of 5 books, including Culture Making, Recovering Our Creative Calling, and most recently, The Life We're Looking For, Reclaiming Relationship in a Technological World. He previously served as an executive editor for Christianity Today, and his work has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Time Magazine. We're excited to welcome Andy to the podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Marcus Goodyear. Hi, Marcus.
Hi, Camille.
Hi, Andy. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much. Great to be with you guys.
Yes, we're thrilled to have you. We have, I feel, lots to talk about because I'm sure you all know that your work is just really top of mind, very timely, especially in your newest book, but all of your work. So we're very excited. I want to just jump right in and ask you, you have said that we all have a need to be known and loved through personal relationships. But we've seen an attempt to sort of displace that need with the
Mhm.
ease of technology. I would love to hear you talk more about that.
I loved your intro, Camille. That, gosh, I've got news to share. I think before a very short time ago, we would have all thought, I will go tell my news. Like there's
Yes.
this, maybe the most interesting news in human history was when a young woman who was betrothed but not married, she hadn't been engaged
Oh,
yet. She didn't have the photo in front of the Alamo. Suddenly, this angelic visitor arrives and is like, "You're actually going to have a baby, even though
Yeah.
you've never known a man, right?" And what does she do in Luke's account of this? She runs, or she goes with haste to her cousin who lives far, several days' journey away, and then visits her for weeks. It turns out her cousin is also expecting a baby very unexpectedly, right?
Yeah.
And like our instinct would have been make the personal connection
Yeah.
uh, until very recently. But under the influence of this idea, we could get more out of the world if we depersonalized it. We have, in a whole series of transactions, kind of redesigned our world to be less personal, more efficient for sure, generating more economic value in many ways,
Yeah.
but at the cost of no longer seeing ourselves, our relationships, and maybe even our relationship to the world as a whole as a deeply personal affair. So
Yeah.
that is kind of what the last book of mine is about,
Yeah.
indeed. Yeah.
That efficiency piece is really
Mm,
important because
yes.
yes.
there's this tension there, right? That
Yeah.
efficiency is good, right? Efficiency,
Right.
we want that, right? We're making a little more money, we're saving a little bit more time. Time is money, all of those things. There's this instinct that, uh, this is a positive. What's the
Right.
problem? What are we
Right.
losing? What are we losing
Right.
out on, I think, yeah.
So I would say that the two things that technology has allowed us to greatly expand for people are actually efficiency. You could say productivity, which is
Yes.
Mhm.
another way of saying
Yes.
efficiency. And I
Yes.
Yeah.
would add safety. So my concern is that we've taken that model, actually of both safety and productivity, interestingly, and applied it to realms of human experience where it doesn't actually work very well. And it is in everything that has to do with the formation of persons. So, where are the places where you and I are shaped to become the kind of people that we could be if someone cared enough to help us develop, help us be formed into something?
Yeah.
I think there are 3 big ones for most human beings. The home is primary. There are things that happen in our family of origin, no matter how complex, that is, that shape us in ways we can't get anywhere else. Then school is another, how human beings got shaped as young people in particular. And then for those who are, pursuing or kind of find themselves identified with a faith tradition, what you could broadly call church or religious community, and it's in those 3 places that I'm most worried, that when we start trying to be efficient, we're actually missing the key thing because formation requires friction. The whole point of efficiency
Hmm.
is to make that clock work so predictably and reliably. It's just that that's not good for actually forming people. And, so in the formative places, and I would say the formative stages of our lives and the big moments, I mean, like engagement, like the beginning of a marriage, where you may be of any age, but you're starting out on some new thing together, a new relationship is being formed. It's in those places I think we should have way less tolerance for efficiency
Yeah.
and way less instinct of let's make this productive.
Hearing you talk about the challenges of technology and the challenges of where efficiency and productivity fit make me think about the way we approach challenges in general, whether it's a technical challenge or an adaptive challenge. And I wonder if you could
Yeah.
bring some of those ideas into this conversation.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, yeah, there's different kinds of problems, and so I would borrow this from a really wonderful thinker and writer and teacher named Ronald Heifetz, um, who back in the 1990s and then more recently, kind of extended this a bit. He said there's kind of 3 kinds of problems that we face as human beings, and the first and most fun are what he calls purely technical problems, and in this kind of problem, we can actually say what the problem is. That's not to
Yeah.
be taken for granted. The problem's clear, and there's a clear solution, and there's probably an expert who knows what the solution is,
Yeah.
and you just have to do what the expert tells you to do. So that's what Heifetz and collaborators sometimes call type 1 problems. Purely technical, we know how to solve it. And the whole dream of the modern world is that we'll be able to make all the problems technical. Like we'll
Mhm.
just solve all
Mm,
this stuff, and the
yeah.
experts will tell us how to do it. The problem is there's 2 more types, and so there's an interesting, type, what they call type 2, which is interesting because the problem is actually clear, and the solution may even be known, and the expert knows what you need to do, but the problem is the kind of subject or the patient, let's stick with the medical kind of setting. The patient has to learn and grow and become something different to kind of implement the solution. So this is what we call type 2 problems. We actually know what the solution is, just that to actually implement, you'd have to grow. Then there's what Heifetz calls type 3 problems, and these are the real interesting ones. In fact, he actually says we probably shouldn't call them problems because that implies there's a simple solution out there. So he calls them adaptive challenges or type 3 challenges. And this is where actually it's not so clear even how we would name the problem. Like, so, what you did in your intro, Camille, is you tried to sort of awaken us to a feeling we all have that something has gone a little wrong in the world as we have it, that we're lonelier than we thought we should be, that we're less connected. People say often when you talk about social media, we're more connected than ever, but we don't feel more known,
Uh-huh.
right?
That's it.
But don't
Yeah.
you I'm sure you felt even as you were thinking about how you'd start our conversation, like, "How do I name this? Like,
Right.
how do I describe this?" It's not so clear. It's not like I have an earache, I've got a heartache, but where did it come from? And then the solution is not clear. And in this case, there may be people with a certain level of expertise, but even the expert has to learn and grow to make progress on this. And there are things you can go to the doctor, such as certain conditions we don't know how to cure. I have several friends who have lived for long seasons of their life with what we call chronic fatigue syndrome. And honestly, no one really knows what it is or where it comes from. There is no pill, and there's no thing they can tell you to do that they know will work. And for a physician to accompany a patient who's living with chronic fatigue, that physician who has trained their whole life to solve people's problems has to realize, for now at least, I can't solve this, but I can be with you in it, and I can learn some things as we go as your physician or clinician. There's way more of life that is type 3 than we would like to admit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's a
so
little
there,
messy.
there's no exactly, there's no
Yeah.
pill, there's no answer. And so what does that require of us? It requires that we become a different kind of person than we are in order to be able to integrate whatever suffering is involved there, whatever, but also whatever opportunity for creativity is there.
We're forgetting or not ever acquiring skill sets that are
Yes.
essential.
Yes.
Essential.
Yes. Yes. They're not helping you grow as a human being. So I think truly humane technology would be things that actually keep us engaged in the world, ideally with the four basic dimensions of being human, which are heart, soul, mind, and strength. And I will say, I don't know that there's a better example than the bicycle. So, maybe I picked this because I love it. It's my
I love
favorite thing to
biking.
do. Yeah,
Marcus is a fan. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right. So Marcus, you and I, at least, I mean, not everybody loves biking, and in
Yeah.
fact, it's a declining sport in the United States,
Mm,
which is interesting. But the thing about the bicycle is, it's absolutely technology in the sense that it requires there's a lot of metallurgy involved. There's gears. There's all these things we've discovered through science that make biking compared to almost anything else human beings do. Like it's actually, Camille, it's interesting. It's very efficient. It's
yeah.
That's right.
Steve Jobs famously said he wanted a computer to be a bicycle for the mind. And the reason
Mm,
he said that is that human beings on their own are not faster than many, many other animals. There are lots of animals that can outrun or outfly or even outswim us. But a human being on a bicycle is the most efficient user of energy of any creature. So the bicycle, definitely it's technology, but it involves you. It
Mhm.
strengthens you. It trains you. I acquire certain kinds of skill, and when I'm out on my bike, this is assuming it's not a stationary bike in your basement. I'm like out in the world and I'm experiencing sounds and smells and feeling the rush of the wind and I'm fully engaged in the world. I think that's a template. It's why Steve Jobs chose it as his metaphor for the computer in the early days of Apple. The problem is, I don't think we got a bicycle for the mind. I don't think we got what Steve Jobs dreamed of. I think we got something like a self-driving car for the mind, which is
yeah.
Yeah.
you kind of open up the screen and it's the algorithm starts doing stuff for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you may think, well, this is really cool. It's like doing it itself, but it's not helping you be you. So real humane technology would
Yeah.
help you be you
It's
in a way
good.
that no device can replace. But that's not mostly what we have, and it's not mostly what we've chosen to fill our world with.
But also with a bike, I am the engine. You are the engine. So we're
Yes, exactly.
powering it in a different way than we might do where the computer is giving, especially now with AI, the computer is giving thinking back to us.
Yes. Yes,
And
yes,
we at
yes.
least have to bring the same level of thinking to it. Or I don't know. We're talking about technology, and it feels to me in some ways we're remiss if we don't acknowledge that we are on the cusp of we don't even know what. And I would
We
just be
don't know.
curious to hear
Yeah.
you talk about what new challenges and opportunities are you anticipating in the next 2 to 3 years? Talk about adaptive challenges coming
Uh,
our way.
we well,
Yeah.
indeed, indeed. I mean, the dream continues. So I would say the dream we've been chasing with technology for about 100 years, because the scientific story is a few hundred years old, but we really start putting it all together into these things you might call devices about 100 years ago in a broad way. And I think it's an ancient dream of doing magic. We want like the cheat code
Yeah.
to the world. And
Yeah.
magic is the dream that I'll be able to kind of snap my fingers and the world kind of springs to life at my command and ideally in submission to my will, and gets me all the good I want without having to become a different or especially more loving kind of person. Magic is the belief that all you need is power. And if you have enough power, you can get everything you want. And AI is the latest wave of human beings trying to get something we can snap our fingers, have it spring to life, have it serve us. There's a poem by the poet Johann Wolfgang von Goethe written at the dawn of the scientific era called The Sorcerer's Apprentice. And almost all of us, if we know of it, we know of it through a Mickey Mouse cartoon that was based on it. But it's an 18th century poem about this, poor apprentice, one day to be played by Mickey Mouse, who has
Yeah.
to haul water, and he like charms the broom, right? And the broom
Yes.
starts carrying the water, and he's like, "This is great! Like, now I can relax. Now the work will be done." Of course, in the poem, and it's so prophetic. And by the way,
Yeah.
Goethe wrote this poem called "The Sorcerer's Apprentice." It's kind of a sort of a sing-song ballad. It's very kind of charming in a way, and you can make a cute little Disney film out of it. He also wrote a really long poem called Dr. Faust about a scientist, or kind of scientist magician who wants the key to power and gets it by selling his soul to the devil and is ultimately taken down to hell. Like it's a parable of wanting to do magic and the cost you pay. So here we have these systems that, because of some amazing emergent properties of mathematics, very simple mathematics, interestingly. I mean, not so simple that you and I can just sort of write it down and understand it all, but it's actually not complicated. If you can give them everything human beings have ever put on the internet and they ingest it, these what we call generative pre-trained transformer models, and they take it all in, and then they do some math, very high dimensional but very simple math, something kind of emerges that is a lot like intelligence. I mean, artificial intelligence. It's not created, it's not natural. It's downstream of what human beings have done, but nonetheless, it kind of pops into being and it starts talking to you, and you can tell it, "Hey,
Wild.
be a chatbot." And it should and can be extremely useful. The problem is, it's also going to tempt us to take a forklift with us to the gym of life. Like, that's the best metaphor I've heard. I didn't think of that, but
Yes.
bringing a
Yes.
forklift to the gym. Like, should you bring a forklift to the gym? Well, I mean, it depends on what you want. Like, if you just want the weights to go up and down, the forklift will do more of that than
Oh,
you'll
it's
ever
so
do.
good.
But if you're going to the gym because you have this residual sense, I'm a human being, I'm not made to sit on a couch, I'm made to like develop strength. The last thing you want is to let something else do it for you. They will never be a person because a person is loved into being. And these entities have been willed into being, not loved. We willed that they exist to serve our needs. And is that all bad? No. It, but it does rule out they are not persons, because a person exists in the world and thrives in the world because they're loved. And that's just not how these systems work at all. No one's ever tried to love them. Or, well,
Yeah. Okay.
actually,
Yes,
people have
it gets
also
it
tried
gets a
that.
little dark. Yes, yes.
But
Yeah.
but
I
Yeah.
love
it's
how you paint
mirage.
that picture. Yes, Andy, I love how you paint that picture in this book. And I saw, Marcus, you kind of raising your eyebrows there of this idea of us existing and being people because we are loved and we have this desire to be loved and to love.
Yeah.
I would
Yes.
love Marcus,
Yes.
tell us your thoughts.
I mean, I want to back up and ask what I feel like is a really dumb question. But what exactly do we mean when we say love? Like, okay, so
Oh
if
my
Oh,
the
it's
gosh.
AI
great.
can't love, what does that mean? And what does it mean
Yeah.
when we love each other? Because I have read about
Jeez.
these
Good.
I've read about these philosophers who work at Anthropic who are essentially coaching the AI. They are
Sure.
treating it like a baby and helping it open its eyes,
Yeah.
as they say. Now, these are metaphors, but that's how they're
Yeah.
viewing the work they're doing. So,
Right.
how is
Right.
that different? And how is the AI's response to what they're feeding it different than the way we treat our children? What does it mean to love another person?
Love is the realization that I come to care ultimately more about the good of this other that I encounter than I care about my own good. And I think there's an element in it as well of freedom. That is, we could say voluntarily decide or choose, maybe is a better word, that there's something about you that matters enough that I would give up things that matter to me.
Yeah.
Um, up to and including my own life. And I mean, I remember very vividly when I had a small child realizing, when Timothy was maybe 1 year old, he was just, this is our first child, when he was starting to walk. And I remember like putting him to bed one night and suddenly having this scenario break into my mind of, we lived on a very busy street. There were buses that went by every 10 or 15 minutes. and envisioning my little toddler son breaking free of my grasp for some reason, running out in front of a bus, and realizing that if that were to happen, and if my running in front of the bus and like knocking him out of the way, and then me taking the hit of the bus would save his life, that I would do that without even reflecting.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it would
Yeah.
be, and you all feel this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Then I had the interesting thought, if my wife, Catherine, were to be stepping in front of a bus and my stepping, would save her. And I thought I would do it. I would, but I would think about it. Like,
Oh no.
no,
Have you had
well,
this
I
talk
just,
with your
yes.
wife?
No,
Maybe
no.
she shouldn't listen to this episode.
We'll cut that out, Joe. No.
Just a moment. I'd be like, oh, me, Catherine, it has to be me, but with my baby, I'm sorry. I just think there's something about parenthood that
Yeah.
brings forth the like no need to think,
Yeah.
wired in your bones. Uh, I know it is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, you're
She's
you're
like,
talking you're talking a little bit about what it means to make individual choices that impact the people around us and benefit them sometimes more than us, which
oh,
reminds me
the essence of
of
love is to do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah. This reminds me of an audio clip from again deep in the archives of Laity Lodge's archives from September 2025, when Jamie Smith, was talking about materialism and simplicity. And
Oh,
it
wow.
it comes at a lot of the ideas we've been talking about related to technology. So let's take a
Yes.
moment to listen to this, and then we'd love to get your take, Andy.
All right.
Again, can we just be honest that in the context of American Christianity, where we inhabit unquestionably the most prosperous, affluent nation in the history of the world, the lures and temptations and malformations of materialism and consumerism is not just a matter of our individual personal habits and choices. It's reflective of an entire social system that commodifies everything and really ultimately exploits all of us, though obviously in very, very different ways. I would say if we really want to have a more expansive sense of what's at stake here, we need to stop thinking about this just in terms of possessions, and it's almost more a matter of being possessed. I think as long as we only think about wealth and materialism as this kind of personal, private problem and how I relate to stuff, we won't really understand why Jesus calls it mammon, a god, an idol, a false spirit that we have to wrestle with. We need to realize that this is a communal dynamic. It's not just a private and personal dynamic.
Andy,
Wow.
we would love to hear your thoughts on this clip.
Very aligned, I would say, with what Jamie is saying there. A couple things I would highlight. We got around to this in an interesting way. I mean, this is the things we're confronting are not individual problems. And I think what part of what Jamie is saying is you can't just sort of individually be like, I'm going to live a simpler life, or because we've made this collective decision as a whole society to pursue the kind of magic that we think is going to do amazing things and relieve us of so many burdens that we don't want anymore. Um, and so it's an inherently social, communal, as he says, problem. Um, the one thing that I think I would go go beyond what we heard, at least just then, is I don't think the problem is stuff. I think the problem is tools, is devices, is
Yeah.
things that work for us. It's not
Mm.
just I want lots of things in my life. It's that I want robots.
Yeah.
Robot, some people know, is a word coined by a Czech writer who was
Yeah.
writing a
RUS.
play. Rawson's Universal Robots
Mm-hmm.
is the name of the company in the play. And, gosh, I'm not gonna Chopek was the last name of this playwright, and his brother was like, he was, like, looking for a word to describe these kind of automatons that would, be made by human beings, but in the play ultimately rebel against and, extinguish human beings. They actually extinguish the human race. And his buddy was like, "Oh, you should use this word from the Slavic word robota," or I don't know how they pronounce it, but that means slave or enslaved kind of population that work
Yeah. Yeah.
without compensation. I mean, yes, we want lots of things, but what we really want is lots of, if I may be so bold, slaves. That is, things that we are not morally accountable to, that because they do not really love and we're not loved into being, don't call forth love from us. They are just useful to us. But wouldn't it be handy if they actually acted like people? Because then we could talk to them and then we could, get them to do all the things we want people to do for us, but you can't properly ask people to do, like be available any time of day to do the thing
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah.
Like we have no obligations to them morally. Um, and why do we want that? And this is Jamie says this, and I think this is very important. There is a power at work in the world that Jesus gives us the proper name for, that is not just its generic description, but it's like the name like your parent would give you a name.
Yeah.
Its name is mammon.
Yeah.
And mammon is the principle of using the material things of the world to get power such that you can get whatever you want without responsibility, duty, obligation, and certainly not love. And I really believe, if you ask why are technologies deployed, they are not deployed. They aren't even deployed consistently because they'll make our lives better. Because if that were the case, when Meta, as it's called now, or Facebook as it was for many years, got the first bit of research, internal research, well validated that its own products were doing harm to the self image of teenage girls, the whole system would have been like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We've got to change this. Clearly,
Yep.
something's wrong. And there were people in Meta who wanted to do that. But the system as a whole was like, we're going to disregard that. We're going to suppress that. We're going to stop doing that research. Why? Because it's more profitable to do what
Yep.
we're doing.
Yep.
We don't have these technologies in our pockets because they are good for us. We have them in our pockets because they are good for mammon, for the
Yeah.
principle of gaining wealth and power through the material things of the world and by disregarding the obligations of love. So I think I mean that those are my riffs on what I hear there, and it also makes you realize like the stakes here are I wrote a book called The Tech Wise Family that's been widely read. I'm so glad. I'm really glad for all the influence it's had. But the only thing I don't like about it is when people say, "Oh, Andy wrote a really good book about screen time limits for kids." And I'm like, that is not what I was trying to write about. Like,
Yeah.
the game is so much bigger. First of all, it's not just about the kids. The kids want their parents to have screen time limits. If you ask the kids,
Yes.
they're like, "I wish my parents would put down their phone and talk to
Yes.
me."
Yeah.
But it's not even about the screens. It's about what are we after in this world and who's whispering in our ear? Because I define the demonic, that is the spiritual powers that rebel against God, as a will with a whisper. The demonic is not able to kind of directly take over the created world because they don't have bodies.
Yeah.
But what they can do is whisper in our ears and say, wouldn't you like to have power? Wouldn't you like life to be easy? Wouldn't you like to not have to love in order to get what you want? And the communal question for
Wouldn't you
us,
like all the knowledge?
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a whisper that one story says our parents heard and took the bait, which was, wouldn't you like to be like God, knowing
Yeah.
good and evil?
That's
Wouldn't you
it.
like the tree of the knowledge?
Yeah.
And yeah, and we've got to decide, no, we actually don't want, I don't want any good thing without becoming a different kind of person who is able to handle it. And that will mean ultimately becoming fully transformed by love. To handle all the good this world could offer me, I have to become entirely formed by love. And that will not, there's no shortcuts. And we have to become the kind of people who say, I'm not interested in the shortcut. I don't want your
Yeah.
forklift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. Jamie gets at something here. Of course, there's so much there, but this idea of this being a communal dynamic. And I think about, in sort of these practical terms, when I apply the same logic to the use of technology, I think about the fact that there are we have all adopted these technologies in ways that would make it difficult for me just to say,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
gonna stay off my phone.
Oh,
I'm gonna
yeah.
stay off my phone. My mom would have a problem with me staying off my phone for a full day, right? Like,
Oh,
Yes, indeed.
Kathy Hill's gonna be like, "You didn't call me back," right? That there is this necessarily
Yeah.
inherently communal dynamic at play here
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
we don't make that decision in a vacuum.
Yeah,
No,
this is a
no.
social compact we're in. My
Yeah.
wife and I fantasize about getting a flip phone, and we're like, "But wait a minute, we would lose our authenticator apps. I would lose podcasts. I mean, I do love
Right.
podcasts. I would I
Yes.
wouldn't be able to text people. That's kind of the
Mm,
least of my problems." But I've
yeah.
experienced this over the last 3 years as I've been biking to work because I got rid of my car. My family
Oh,
has a car, but I bike to work
yeah.
all the time, and let me tell you, it's stressful.
Well, I think you guys are so right. I mean, John Haidt and others have
Yes.
Mhm.
raised the salience of this phrase "collective action problems." Because that is what
Yeah.
smartphones are with kids, which is what John is working on in particular. And so, yeah, I think I would say it's both like it. I think there's bad news and good news. So the bad news is indeed we're all kind of implicated in this, and it's very hard to extricate yourself, especially when mom's sending the text message.
Right.
um, the good news, though, I think is we can redesign. I really
Mm,
think we can redesign, and it's not about the things; it's about the processes and the assumptions and the dreams we're chasing with these things.
Yes.
In the life we're looking for, the most recent book, I talk about the difference between devices, which I would use for all the technology that kind of lets us off the hook, you might say, of being human and does things for us. But there's another kind of very high tech stuff, which I call instruments, which can be very technologically advanced, but keep human beings fully engaged with each other in the world. And we can absolutely start kind of insisting, as you could say, as consumers or as users or purchasers, I only want this if I can use it to be human.
yeah.
And we need like a worldwide, better do it quickly because it's only getting harder, like redesign of what we're expecting these things
That's
to do.
good.
And I don't think that's out of reach, but it does require a kind of new imagination and the will to say, hey, mom, let's figure out how we can stay in touch. But I need to not be kind of at the mercy of my device. So how will we do it? And you figure
Yeah.
that out with your family, with your coworkers, and but we have to have the like desire to live
Yes.
human lives again. And that's sort of why I write what I write.
Yes. Well, thank you for doing that. Yeah. Andy, as we're nearing a close here, I we have referenced it and made nods to it throughout, but I would love to know if you have any more to say about whether there is a unique uh, issue or need for people of faith to really tackle this issue of overuse of technology. Is there nuance here specifically for people of faith and overuse of
Hmm.
technology?
I think actually one of the cool things, if you could say that, about some of the discontent of with technology is how broadly shared it is. There are other issues on which I, as a person of faith, am really concerned, but my neighbor who may not share my faith actually isn't concerned at all about it, or maybe on the other side. On this issue, we're kind of all on the same side. Like we all feel like something's wrong. We all feel like something needs to be redesigned, and I think that's a beautiful moment of solidarity and opportunity for a kind of dialogue about what it is to be human and what really matters that we haven't maybe had a reason to have for many years. So I would just say that. But I do believe for those of us who, and faith can mean a lot of things, but let's say you orient your life around the story told through the Jewish and Christian scriptures of a loving God who comes actually in the flesh and joins our human condition and then sends his spirit such that we can actually share in his divine life, this kind of Trinity story of the Christian faith. There's two things that are real resources for kind of addressing the moment we're in. The first is we have a coherent story of what it is to be human. And by the way, it centers on a human being who called himself, using this Hebrew expression, the Son of Man, which means kind of the it's son of in Hebrew means kind of typifying or like the example of, and and so he's like saying, if you look at my life, I want you to come to believe that I'm actually showing you the best way to be human. And the fascinating thing is, he did not use any technology, including the ones available to him. The first two technologies in human history, in some ways, are money and writing.
Mm.
And Jesus of Nazareth, there was apparently a purse of money, but it was carried by the disciples. It was actually carried by the least reliable
Yeah.
disciple, and Judas.
Yes, yes.
So he didn't care about money. He didn't rely on money. He didn't need money to get done what he got done in the world, his incredibly consequential life. And he didn't write anything down. Other people did, but he himself did not. So the most consequential human life is not one that depends on even
Mm.
the things we consider indispensable. They weren't for him. So we've got a story. And also, Marcus, you asked that impossible question, what is love? Well, you know, w- and ultimately to answer that, you got to go find a story that will help you
Yeah,
understand it. And
that's
and the
right.
Yeah.
Christian belief, the Christian claim and offer to the world is this story will tell you. If you want to know what love is,
Yeah.
it's everything you thought and more. It's everything you thought and different. And it's told in this story that starts in Genesis and ends in Revelation.
Yeah.
So we've got the story and we've got the example, and not just a theoretical example, but someone who took it all on, all the pain of being human, all the risk. We're recording this in the season of Lent, where we pray that in some traditions, this is the one who was tempted in every way, like we were, but without falling prey to temptation. Like he's in it with us, right? So that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say is that human nature abhors a cultural vacuum. So if you say don't do something, like stop checking your social media every 5 minutes or whatever, you got to give people something else to do. They
Yes,
Yeah.
won't
that's right.
just
Yeah.
stop.
That's right.
And nothing gives you a more robust way and a community who will do it with you of a different thing to do with your life, a different rhythm to order your life by, a different way of spending your hours, your days, your weeks, than the practice of faith. And this is why people like John Haidt,
Good.
who I've collaborated with on some things, and John will very straightforwardly say he doesn't believe in God. He's a very secular person, though ethnically Jewish. But John will be the first to say only religious communities are having any different outcomes from anyone. Or they're only the only ones having beneficial outcomes in technology, especially with children, which is what he is working the hardest
Yeah.
on. Because religious communities actually can hold together a different way of being human and do it in the face of pressure and when the whole world is doing something different. So ultimately, not just because we're really good people and we band together, but because we inhabit a story that gives us a reason to be a different kind of people and then gives us a group of people to do it with. So those things are the indispensable contributions that faith makes. And the just beautiful thing is that our whole world is hungry for it.
Yeah.
And for those of us who believe we're called to share our faith, there's no more amazing time than right now to
Yeah.
say, I believe something different, and my community and I are living it out, and come and see. Like,
Yeah.
we'd love to have you join us because we think it's the way back to real human life.
Gosh, Andy, that just feels like a perfect place to really wrap up. And anything else we should be on the lookout for coming up for you?
Oh, good
Well, just keep a
question.
lookout for our community at Praxis, which is my day
Yes.
job, a community of
Yes.
entrepreneurs and venture builders. And given the topic of this conversation, I'd just say we've got a couple of, we call them opportunities for redemptive imagination, where we have whole groups of entrepreneurs working on issues. And one is technology and family life. And another is artificial intelligence. And we have a redemptive thesis for artificial intelligence, how
Mm.
people actually building this
Ooh.
stuff could think differently about it. And you can find that
Wow.
online if you Google like Praxis redemptive thesis for artificial intelligence. You'll read how our community is actually building companies with a different kind of vision of what it is to be human. So yeah, maybe not so much my own work, but those are the people I collaborate with every day.
I love it. Andy, we're so grateful for your time and for our conversation. This has been awesome. So thank you very much.
Such a gift. Thank you both.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
The Echoes podcast is written and produced by Marcus Goodyear, Rob Stinnett, and me, Camille Hall Ortega. It's edited by Rob Stinnett and Kim Stone. Our executive producers are Patton Dodd and David Rogers. Our original music is by Johnny Rogers. Special thanks to our guest today, Andy Crouch. In addition to the Echoes podcast, we welcome you to subscribe to Echoes Magazine. You'll receive a beautiful print magazine each quarter, and it's free. You can find a link in our show notes. The Echoes podcast and Echoes magazine are both productions brought to you by the H.E. Butt Foundation. You can learn more about our vision and mission at hebfdn.org.